Welcome to Talk Travel with Heather Tate, North Mississippi's podcast for savvy travelers. Talk Travel with Heather Tate is a weekly podcast that airs every Monday on the Shark 102.3 FM radio station based in Ripley, Mississippi, and is then released as a podcast. Travel advisor and travel enthusiast Heather Tate of Whimsical Destinations gives listeners expert travel tips curated through the years of personal and professional experience. By clicking subscribe, you'll have a new travel tip to add to your collection delivered to your podcast library every Monday. Talk Travel with Heather Tate is brought to you by Sun Bear Studio. Sun Bear Studio is a boutique recording studio in the heart of Ripley, Mississippi. When you record with us at Sun Bear Studio, we can mix, master, register, and publish your music, your podcast, or your family story. Email us when you're ready at sunbear@jc.media.
This program was recorded at Sun Bear Studio in Ripley, Mississippi.
Good morning, Northeast Mississippi travelers. This is Heather with Talk Travel with Heather Tate, and I am so excited to share my adventures and tried and true tips with you, whether you are also a seasoned traveler, a hopeful traveler, or currently an armchair traveler, meaning you're going to follow along with us from home for now. This is our 107th episode of Talk Travel with Heather Tate. And if you haven't listened to the last couple of episodes, I encourage you to go back and listen to them because this is going to conclude our three-part series of our Niagara Falls road trip. The first episode was about Niagara Falls itself. We stayed in Canada. And the second one last week was Niagara-on-the-Lake, which a lot of people will be less familiar with. And this one is going to be about our road trip detours. And I'm very excited to share this with you because even though Niagara Falls, the main destination was going to be Niagara Falls and Niagara-on-the-Lake, there's a lot that went on this 15-hour road trip that we extended to be a couple of days on the way there and an extra day on the way back. We had a long drive there and back, and I filled it with, I think, interesting detours. And I'm not just talking about the Starbucks stops because we had those too. You guys already know that I have two boys, ages 12 and 7, London and Christian. London could be content to ride in a car, listen to music, write a story, read a book, watch a movie. He could do it all day long. And he's always been that way. As long as it was during the day, he was fine with riding, even when he was a baby. Christian, not so much. Christian will tell you that he hates a long car ride. And he's my one that I have to make sure that I am including several stops so he can get his energy out so he doesn't feel tied down in the back seat, right, where he's just pin up energy. And so I try extra hard to make it fun on a road trip that's going to be that long because I knew that he was going to be my tough cookie. And he was. He did not disappoint in that. So I wanted to pepper our trip with some fun stops. On the way there, we were going to stop in Ohio for 2 nights. So that was going to really break up this trip. It was only about an 8-hour drive to where we were going to be in Beaver Creek, Ohio, which is near Dayton, Ohio. That's where Amanda, my best friend, we were meeting her for her 40th birthday, and we were actually driving in on the day of her birthday. So we were on a little bit of a time crunch on the way in. So at first I thought, okay, first stop, we could go somewhere really fun for lunch. So that's something I recommend when you're doing a long road trip. Find really interesting places to stop and eat along the way. I am not all about zipping into fast food and zipping out. That's not how we travel. I want to go to places along the way that give me a little insight about where that place is and makes it so much more fun for me. So you'll very rarely see us go to fast food unless it's like on our way back. Nothing was open, and we were so happy to find a Domino's that was open till 2 a.m. So we were going to stop at the Loveless Cafe, just right off of the Natchez Trace outside of Nashville, Tennessee, because that was along our way. But it was a Saturday, and if you've ever been to the Loveless Cafe, which is famous for their biscuits, they're also famous for long lines and long waits. And it was going to be about an 1.5-hour wait, which we did not have in our schedule because we were making it for Amanda's birthday dinner. So attempt number 1 at Loveless Cafe did not work out. So we're like, it's okay. We'll grab something, quick and, for lunch, and we're going to have a really good dinner that night. Because we knew the whole next day we were going to take a break from driving. And so that was a long day. Our first day, we went from, Guntown, Mississippi, where we live, all the way to, we were in Beaver Creek, Ohio. And at that point, Christian felt like, okay, I've done it. That was an all day of driving. We're here. I get to rest tomorrow. And he was right, because I planned that we would go to the National Air Force Museum in Dayton, Ohio. We had been before when we went to visit Amanda and Andy a couple of years ago, and the boys loved it so much that that's all they've been talking about, wanting to make sure they went back to see it again. There's just so much to see there. And both my boys are aviation enthusiasts, so they wanted to go. I love planes, but not like my boys love planes. And so I was still excited to go back. So we had all day planned where we were going to, get to go eat some other places, maybe go to the park that evening, but the full day was going to be dedicated for going to the Air Force Museum. So a couple of things about the Air Force Museum. It is free, completely free, both entrance fees for everyone and parking. So if you're going to Niagara Falls or you're going to Ohio or you're going anywhere that direction, you want to have the National Air Force Museum on your list of things to do, because not only is it the world's largest military aviation museum, it's also going to be really easy on your pocketbook. And we needed that because if you listen to my last couple of episodes, I gave you a little bit of insight in how expensive the rest of our trip was going to be. So the Ohio portion of our trip really helped us be able to dedicate more of our funds for the Niagara Falls part because it was free. So, and they do have a really good gift shop and you can give donations there. So they definitely have ways for funding, but to be able to just go and you could spend hours. We were there for 4 hours and didn't see everything. So it's a lot. The way it's organized, it goes from the beginning, the birth of flight. You've got the Wright brothers and their first planes and the history there. And then it's going to take you through all of the major wars where our Air Force was involved. So you're talking like you've got World War I, World War II, you have Korean War, Vietnam, Desert Storm. There's so many different time periods that they're all organized chronologically that way. So it's a really interesting way of being able to see just the evolution of flight. Also, one of my favorite parts about it is you get to go on real Air Force One planes and like where the presidents have been. There's 4 Air Force One airplanes and you can go on all 4 of them. That's one of my favorite parts. There's also some simulators. There's some other cockpits that the kids or even the adults can get in for pictures. And so it is very family friendly. The boys absolutely loved it. So that was one of our big things that we did on our trip there. So other things that we did when we were on our way to Niagara Falls is we found ourselves in Ohio's covered bridge district. Covered bridges everywhere in this beautiful part of Ohio. The longest covered bridge, drivable covered bridge in the U.S. and the 4th longest in the world. We found ourselves a mile or 2 away from it while we were driving up to Niagara Falls. And we're like, we're going to take a detour. And then that's when we went and had lunch. We passed a drawbridge. Christian has never seen a drawbridge in action. So being right there on the Great Lakes, it was beautiful. We had a really good lunch near the water. And so, again, we found interesting places to stop along the way. On the way back, we also had some fun things. Now, we only had one night on the way back on our trip. We made it 2 nights on the way there because, again, we were adding so much for Ohio. And I'm going to share with you about our adventures on the way back on the extended episode because that is all the time we have for this portion of our radio show. Happy traveling. That's it for this edition of Talk Travel with Heather Tate. Tune in every Monday at 11 a.m. to turn your travel dreams into travel plans. If you have a question, comment, or suggestion for an interview or for access to this interview, go to our website, shark1023.com, and click on the podcast tab. This interview can also be found on Apple, Google, and Amazon Podcast. Keep it tuned to the Shark 1023 and start planning your next trip.
This show is made possible by JC Media, LLC in Ripley, Mississippi. JC Media owns the Shark 102.3 Classic Rock FM radio station where the show is hosted, and Sun Bear Recording Studio where the interviews are recorded. We need your feedback and support. If you listen to the podcast on a player like iTunes, Google Podcasts, or Amazon Music, please subscribe to the show and leave us a review. We also have an email in which you can share your feedback. That email is theshark1023@gmail.com. Subscribe to our podcast on your favorite app or stream episodes online at shark1023.com/podcasts. Today's episode was produced by Melinda Marsalis. It was edited by Rick Williams and engineered by Chris Marsalis. The podcast technician is Joyce Grady.